All right, let's talk about something we've all been through, being graded. Today, we're going beyond just tests and looking at a totally different way to figure out what someone really knows.
I mean, come on. Of course you have, right? You cram for weeks, you absolutely know the stuff inside and out, and then you sit down for the test, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't come out. That feeling, that huge gap between what's in your head and what you can prove on paper, that's exactly what we're digging into today.
So, Section 1. Tests aren't the whole story. We're talking about moving beyond just filling in that multiple-choice bubble.
And this quote from H. Douglas Brown really hits the nail on the head. Think about it. A test is just a tool, like a ruler. A ruler's fantastic for measuring how long something is, but you'd never use it to check the temperature, right? That simple insight kicked off a whole movement asking, well, if tests are only one tool, what other tools are out there in the toolbox?
And that leads us straight to this idea of alternative assessment. The name says it all, really. It's a direct response to the fact that tests can't measure everything. The point isn't to get rid of tests completely, but to complete the picture, to get a richer, more accurate idea of what someone is actually learning.
Which brings us to Section 2, the assessment alternative. So what does this stuff actually look like in the real world?
You know, what's really fascinating here is just how different this feels from a typical test. Instead of just remembering facts, students have to do something. Build a project, solve a problem that feels real. The focus shifts. It's not just about the final answer, but the whole journey of getting there. And it's all baked right into what's already happening in the classroom.
Now, this all sounds pretty amazing, doesn't it? More authentic, definitely more engaging, but as you can probably guess, it's not quite that simple. Once you step away from the easy bubble sheet, you create this massive challenge for how we even think about grading.
Which brings us right here to Section 3, the Great Assessment Trade-off. This is the core problem, the central dilemma of trying to measure knowledge.
Okay, so you have these two forces, basically pulling in opposite directions. On one side, you've got practicality and reliability. Can I give this to 200 students without losing my mind? Can I grade it fast and make sure it's fair for everyone? And then, on the other side, you've got washback and authenticity. Does this task actually look like something you'd do in a real job? And more importantly, does studying for it actually help you learn? Here's the kicker. You can't max out both. It's a trade-off. And this graph shows that trade-off perfectly. Look up there in the top left corner. That's your classic large-scale multiple-choice test. It is off the charts when it comes to being practical and reliable. Super easy to give out, a machine can score it in seconds, totally consistent. But it's at rock bottom for authenticity. It doesn't look like anything you do in the real world. Now just follow that line down to the bottom right. As you move toward things like essays, and then all the way over to portfolios and journals, what happens? Authenticity goes through the roof, but practicality, it completely tanks. These things take forever to grade, and making sure you're scoring them the same way every time, it's a massive headache. This relationship, this seesaw, is the puzzle every educator has to solve.
Okay, Section 4. Putting alternatives into practice. Enough with the theory. Let's look at some real-world examples in the classroom.
So first up, we have the portfolio. And no, this is not just some random folder of old homework. The key word here is purposeful. A portfolio tells a story. It's curated by the student to show their whole journey, the growth, the struggles, and the breakthroughs. It's a living, breathing document of learning, not just a one-and-done snapshot.
So portfolios are great for showing the product of learning over time. But if you want to see the actual process, well, for a truly personal and interactive look, you can't beat the dialogue journal. This is literally a private conversation happening on paper between a student and their teacher.
Just listen to this entry from a student. I mean, you can feel it, can't you? The tasteless noodles. This isn't about practicing verb tenses. This is about sharing a real human experience. It's got so much vivid emotional detail. There's no way a standardized test could ever capture something like this.
And then look at the teacher's response. It's not a bunch of red marks and corrections. It's empathy. It's connection. Now I know why you were so quiet. The teacher isn't just a grader anymore. They're a reader, a listener. The assessment itself becomes a tool to build a real relationship, to understand the student as a person. This is assessment as a conversation.
But these alternatives don't just change things for the teacher. They're a game changer for students too, because they empower students to start assessing themselves. Suddenly, assessment isn't the scary thing that's done to you. It's something you do for yourself.
So what does that look like? Well, it could be a simple checklist, where you reflect on how you're doing in class. Am I asking good questions? Am I actually listening to my classmates? Or it could be a questionnaire to help you and your teacher figure out your own learning style. Do I learn best by listening, by doing, by arguing with a group? Or it could be as straightforward as this. Here are the goals for this unit. Like, I can describe the weather, and you just check off whether you feel like you can do it yet or not. This makes students an active partner in their own learning. It's powerful stuff.
All right, let's wrap this up in Section 5, redefining the final grade. So how do we put all these different pieces together? Honestly, the best metaphor is to think of it as building a richer assessment toolkit.
And let's circle back to that big idea of trade-offs. Take a look at this chart. Don't worry about reading every single box. Just glance at the patterns. You see portfolios, journals, one-on-one conferences. They're all ranked high on authenticity and having a positive impact on learning. But look at their practicality scores, low or moderate. It just proves the point. You need different tools for different jobs.
And that really is the most important thing to remember here. This is not some kind of war between good, authentic assessments and bad, traditional tests. The real goal is to combine the strengths of both worlds, to use the reliability of tests and the richness of these alternatives to get the most complete, useful, and human picture of what a student has learned.
So, I'll leave you with this to chew on. What if we just reframed the whole point of this? What if the things we do to assess learning, the projects, the conversations in a journal, the self-reflection, what if those things were actually the most powerful learning experiences of all? Thanks for joining us.